this video, I want to walk through the web configuration for the C200 device from H3J. The web interface is the easiest way to make the changes to the console. Even though a lot of this can be accessed from the display, it's just not as easy as coming into the website or the web page configuration and setting it up. Now, to do this, when you turn the switcher, plug the switcher in, you hold the what would be preview 1 down until it comes up, and then it will tell you on the screen that it's in config mode. And when you do that, you just go to the IP address that's been assigned to the console, and right here you're going to walk through and we're going to see we set the IP address. We do not use DHCP because we want to know where this is all the time. So that's a very important thing to kind of remember. We may in the future add the DHCP option. We actually removed it. We had it in there for a while and we didn't like not knowing where things were, so we took it out. And then because we can go to the internet, we need to give us a few more pieces of information. One of them being we need to know what the net mask is. So you see right here the net mask, the default gateway, and where is the DNS server. So after you configure the basic networking, you come down and we support currently the ATEM switcher, the Wirecast switcher, and the vMix switcher. So if this checkbox is here, it says that it's active and will do that function. And the reason these are all checked, and I'll show you this, let me just, I'm going to save one of these real quick. I'm going to undo just so Wirecast is the only thing. And when it comes back, you're going to notice a lot of things are changed. A lot of things are missing now because we actually take them off the screen as not to confuse you. So I'm going to turn these back on because I want these options in here. So not meaning to confuse you, but I want to show you all the options that are available because a lot of things go away when they're unchecked. So I have activated currently the ATEM, Wirecast, and vMix, and I'm running both Wirecast and vMix on the same machine, and then .23 is my ATEM. So scroll down here, and again, you got to remember these would not be here if I didn't have an ATEM or a vMix. The tally priority though is always here because I need to know what you want to control the tally light on the switcher. So you can say this is the priority. So if you're going to make this first button, like in our case, we actually use this first button and the second button so something in Wirecast for most of the time. So I want to know from Wirecast what's the status of that. Same with number 2, and in our case we would typically make this the ATEM. So these 4 buttons, I want to get the tally back from ATEM, and then since I'm running a television studio, I don't have a 7 and 8, so I set them up to be Wirecast. And then we come down and we say, what do we want the ATEM to do when I press this button? So in the case of button 1 and 2, I don't want it to do anything, but in the case of button 3 and 4, I do want it to control the ATEM as well as send things to Wirecast. And then at the end, again, it doesn't make sense to send it to Wirecast, to the ATEM. I would basically get Keller bars and Keller if I had these 2 going, but I don't need that in my case, so I'm just going to let Wirecast be the control in this case. Now right here you see vMix, which I don't use vMix in my regular day-to-day, so I'm going to say no control. But in the case of vMix, you could do the same thing. You could have maybe the first 2 be a vMix, these 4 be the ATEM, and these 2 be Wirecast. You can mix it up in any way you see. And the thing is, in case of this, where like 3, 4, 5, and 6, where I have the ATEM doing the control, I can still have the vMix doing control as well. Maybe you're taking the ATEM, sending it into vMix, and you want vMix to do the lower thirds or some other kind of graphic. In fact, this is how we use it with Wirecast. Is when we configure Wirecast on the Wirecast machine, we actually set up lower thirds. So when I go to 5, for example, which is typically my front shot, I can put my lower third up automatically in Wirecast. So it's really controlling more than one thing simultaneously with the same button. So in the case of us, though, I'm going to say no control for vMix. But you can see the first 4 channels in vMix, and then you see they get a little wider here. And because depending on what version of vMix, you may only have 4 channels to switch. Why not use these last 8 buttons for something different? So you'll see there's a lot more options now for vMix whenever we pull down that list. Let me pull it up a little bit so it's in the window so you can see how long the list is. But we can do all these different things with vMix on these last 4 buttons right here. So that's how you configure the different channel buttons for for Wirecast, the ATEM, and the vMix. Now, one of the things you're going to notice here is there is no row for Wirecast, and that's because the software we run that we created that runs on the Wirecast machine does all of this and a lot more by watching every single button that is pressed, which that's how it allows us to have the ATEM switch to channel 5, and then when I see the 5 button pressed, I can have it do certain things. So every button is always sent to Wirecast, and you configure that on the client application, which is another video completely than this one. Then we come down to special buttons. So we, on the C200, have an 8 button row right above the channel, what we call the channel buttons, and they can be used to either control a bus, or you can set each individual button. So they're essentially user buttons, but typically in use, people use them as a bus control or something like that. We don't really care how you use them. You can use them any way you want. Think outside the box, you know, from that point of view. But in the ATEM, you can see we can change all of these parameters currently, and each button can do this. So you can do your transitions or whatever. You want to add your fade to black to there, or actually I typically put fade to black on the first one if I'm going to put it on this row. And then maybe you do your transitions like this. Now I typically do all those transitions down in the next section, so I'm going to go ahead and for right now, well, I'll leave them like that. It's not going to hurt anything to leave them like that. And then the same thing goes with vMix. We showed you that long list. All those functions in vMix can be assigned to any of those 8 buttons right there. So this goes the whole way across. Everything is just the same. So let me come down to what we call the control buttons. So in the control buttons on the C200, we actually have, what would it be, 9 buttons. So we have at the bottom the L shape, which is typically by default, we send it out by default with cut, auto, and then the DSK1, DSK2. And so that, and then the very top button we generally assign like to fade to black. It's I think that says the default fade to black, and then we do what is it, mix, dip, wipe, and sting, I think is what we do, just like that. And then these would be the cut and the auto buttons, and then this would be DSK2, this would be DSK1. I know it seems backwards, but really the last 8, button number 8 is really the one above this one. So that would set us the way, this is how it comes default out of the box, just like this. So same thing goes with vMix. These are bottom buttons, like where I put cut and auto, you see I already have cut and auto, and I can change the transitions right here. I have fade to black at the top button. So these are basically set up very similar to what I have in the ATEM. And again, if I hit this button right here, it's going to send both to the ATEM and vMix to do this. So for example, if I pressed 1 to fade to black, it would send the fade to black command to the ATEM and to vMix. And it would also tell the Wirecast client application that this button was pressed, and whatever I had configured over there would function as well, all at the same time. They all work together at exactly the same time. Okay, so in the C200 we actually have RGB buttons, where if you watch the video for the C100, you know we only have red or green. And this allows you to determine what your default colors are. So when the button is not selected in the preview row, I have it to green. And when it's selected, I actually have it to green, but at a higher intensity. So this is a common question we get: how can you adjust the intensity? So what we basically do is, because the 255 is the intensity, it's maximum intensity, we take this mix and then we take it times this percentage to get the lower values. So you can basically dim, you find a color you like, and you can basically dim it here by changing the intensity value. And that's configurable for both the preview of the program, what we call the special row, which is the 3rd row up. It could be the bus or whatever you're using it for. And then the commands are on the right hand side, which are typically the cut, auto, that type of stuff. And you can define the colors of both not selected and selected. If you wanted to do a red-green combination, you can do that. You can do maybe a light red or an orange when not selected, green when they are selected. It's up to you. You can make any kind of color that you want there. Alright, so the other feature that we recently added to the C200, it's kind of like a last minute decision, was the ability to do GPIO. And this allows you to do what you want it to do whenever the GPIO closes. So we don't really have an interface yet to vMix. We might have that by the time this is actually released. But when the GPIO 1, say when it opens, what you want to do, or when it closes, what you want to do. So you may have some kind of foot pedal type thing. Say you have a equivalent of a dump button in radio where you want to go to black. So you could say when you push the pedal, you want to fade to black. And then when it opens, you want to do the opposite of fade to black. So that's how you can configure all the different GPIOs. And we have 3 of them. We're still looking at other ways we can implement this, like maybe even an output. We have the ability to do an output, so when certain things happen, we can do a contact closure back out. We just don't have it programmed in here yet, but the capability does exist. And we need to ignore the robo camera setup. We decided not to do that in this particular model, but we do have control right now for 2 different cameras, and we actually are working on a 3rd one right now, which is something we use in our studio, which isn't really a remote camera, but it's a remote, it's like a movable head type of thing, and we're working on that right now as well. But these are going to be probably in the C200, which we're currently working on. So we need to kind of remove the robo setup. In the cloud setup, we haven't announced this feature yet, but we have some patent pending technology where you can actually have these units different places. As long as they're connected to the internet, they could be around the world and still be able to control each other from around the world, in addition to doing global tally. So that's all stuff that we're going to announce here very soon. We definitely have the patents in process finally, so we can talk about it now. So that is the setup for the C200.